ago, she reached out to me. She said, hey, I'm going to be a speaker at the Unstoppable Women's Conference, and I just want to get inspired. I want to know, what the conference is all about. What should I expect? How should I prepare? Here's what I love about that. A woman that is willing to reach out for knowledge, to be able to be prepared for something like this, is a woman that's going to come up here and inspire you today. It's amazing when you're willing and you're humble enough to reach out to someone, to ask for assistance, for guidance, so that she can give you the best product. I'm amazed at Michelle already. I love her dearly. Come on up here, Michelle. We're super excited about you.
Microphone? Okay. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, and like Tony said, I'm actually from Vancouver, Washington, so it was quite a trip to get here. I'm excited to be here. So I'm going to be speaking about unstoppable peace. It's something that a lot of us struggle with to get to, and I'm going to talk about my husband's journey through cancer and the way that God brought us peace. Tranquil rivers, majestic mountains, ocean breezes, a quiet heart, a calmed mind, a relaxed body, and an overwhelming peace that passes all understanding. That is what God's peace means to me. My name is Michelle Bader, and I'm very excited to share with you my journey and the ways that God has really blessed my family. Staying in a place of peace is not always easy. It's something that I constantly have to work on. But through my struggles, God has always been faithful to meet me and cover me with a very real peace. I'm going to be sharing with you some pictures along the way about my journey. My husband, Luke, and I met in high school. Let's just skip right over. Okay, so this is Luke. My husband and I met in high school. We did not date. We were good friends. And this is our first picture we had taken together. He was graduating, and he doesn't really look excited to take the picture, but, I made him take the picture. We, kept in contact and actually ran into each other about 4 years later after college, and we instantly fell in love. And we were engaged just 3 months after we started dating. It was very quick, but it was definitely God's timing, as we saw later. We had a dream wedding. Let me go ahead and go to my slide. There's a rehearsal dinner. I was 24, he was 25. We were very excited to get married. We had a dream wedding. There we go. It was at a Queen Anne Victorian mansion. We had twinkling white lights. We had a big white gazebo, 300 guests. It was everything I'd ever dreamed of. Since I was 14 years old, I would visit that place and say, I'm going to get married here someday. This is where I want to get married. So I got to have my very special day there and get married to Luke. It was everything I ever wanted. We went to Maui on a dream vacation. We went scuba diving. We went surfing. Everything that you want to do in Hawaii. It was a magical time. Oh, there's some pictures. Our honeymoon. And then a few months later, we found out we were pregnant. So again, not something that we planned, but it was definitely God's timing for us to get pregnant at that time. So that's our first Christmas in December 2003. So life was good. I was a teacher teaching kindergarten, and Luke was a mail carrier, and we had our first home together, and we would go to work and come home, and it was everything I ever dreamed of about getting married. So things quickly changed after that. Luke began to get pain in his right ankle, and he had a walking route, and so it was something that he noticed. So he went to the doctor. After a while, it took him months, and he finally went in, and he was told, oh, you've got tendonitis, you're 26 years old, it's nothing to worry about. So he went home, and it got bigger, kind of looked like a tennis ball in his ankle. And then we went back to the doctor. And they took some x-rays, and Luke describes it as that day he knew that something was really wrong because they started whispering and saying, how old is he? This is bad. And they didn't know he could hear. So from there, a biopsy was ordered. and we found out the news that nobody wants to hear, that he had cancer at 26 years old. Very rare bone cancer, actually called mesenchymal chondrosarcoma. It was so rare that they did not know how to treat it. Normally found in young children, they didn't know what to do, so they just started giving him chemotherapy. It was definitely nothing we planned. Right into our wedding, there's a picture. I was 7 months pregnant when he was getting chemotherapy there. And I watched my healthy, athletic husband go to a place where he had no energy, he lost all his hair, he had sores in his mouth, and just, completely changed. So I was heartbroken, to say the least. This was nothing, I dreamed of this my whole life, and then everything changed. And I remember feeling like I'm in this nightmare and everybody else's world keeps going. I'm sure you've had similar situations like that, where you feel like, why does everybody else's world get to keep going? And I'm in this nightmare. I was so broken. I was so just devastated that this is what had happened. So he went on with the chemotherapy, and unfortunately that did not shrink the tumor. That was the hopes, that it would shrink his tumor, but unfortunately that was not the case. So we had a really hard decision to make, and that was to either do a surgery to remove the cancer or to amputate his leg. And there were pros and cons to each. Removing the tumor they had a higher chance of it coming back. And so, we didn't want that, obviously. He'd have to wear a special boot the rest of his life. And remember, he was just 26 at the time. And then the amputation, we were told he would have a much healthier life, a much lower chance of the cancer ever coming back. So after a lot of prayer and crying and getting advice, we decided to go with the amputation. Because we not only had ourselves to think about, we had a baby on the way. And we had to think about providing for him, and we want his dad to be around. So that was obviously a very, very hard day. I had all emotions, anger, fear, just what is going on. But God showed up in a big way, as he always does. I was so crushed. I remember feeling like I couldn't speak, I couldn't breathe, I couldn't move. I was just crushed, and there were no words to pray. But I remember very clearly God's voice saying, I'm close to the crushed in spirit and brokenhearted. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit, which is from Psalms 34:18. And I felt that peace. So I was able, in the midst of a crisis, to find that peace that passes all understanding. It's something you can't describe to people. And people have said, well, how do you do it? It's not me, it's God. It's totally his peace. I could not do this on my own. So the day of the amputation came. It was, I would say, close to one of the hardest days of my life. We had friends from church and family, probably about 35 people in the waiting room. And I remember walking in from parking and just thinking, this is the last time I'm ever going to see him walk. There were lots of lasts that we would talk about. But we tried to go into it saying, not this is the last day you'll have your leg, but this is the last day you will have cancer. And that's how we looked at it, because it was only in his ankle, which a lot of times is a lot of other places. So that's how we looked at it. We went into it, and it was a very somber experience when we were with our friends in the waiting room, and I went back with him, and again, I was very pregnant. And when they wheeled him away, I remember just falling against the wall and just crying. And a nurse had to come and, are you okay? And just saying, God, why is this happening? And I remember also just rubbing my belly, going, it's okay, Daddy's okay. And I was also worried about how would he be when he woke up. It's a big change, not only physically, but emotionally. What is this going to do to this once athletic man who now is going to have to learn things all over again? So when I went to see him after the surgery, he was actually in a very good mood. Because he said what had happened is when he woke up, he couldn't move. Like he couldn't feel anything, and he thought something had gone wrong, and that he was going to be paralyzed. So when the numbness or whatever it was wore off, he was happy that it was a loss of the leg and that he wasn't paralyzed. And that night was really, really hard. He was in immense pain, and they couldn't get the pain medication right. And it was the most horrible, pain ever. And so I remember again going, God, why? why are you letting this happen? But again, he covered me with peace. I mean, I can't explain it except to say he met me there with the peace. So, there's another picture when he was going through chemotherapy. And then this is what I love. When our son was born 2 months later, so the surgery was in May, our son was born in July. He did not have his prosthetic leg yet. On crutches, he held my hand while I gave birth to our son. And again, this was God's timing. We needed our little miracle baby to be part of this story and to give us something to look forward to. Also going back to the day of the appointment, the first appointment when they told us that he had cancer, they told us we'd never have any more kids. And I always wanted a big family. They were wrong, I had 2 more, because I had 3 total. But that day, it was very hard when they told me that I would never have any more kids. But I love that he was so faithful, that he was on crutches next to me, holding my hand. And now remember, this is all our first year of marriage. We had just gotten married. This is before our 1-year anniversary. This is like 11 months into our wedding. So we always say, what do people have to complain about their first year of marriage? We spent more nights in hospitals than hotels. And I would always stay with him. They thought we were really funny when he would get chemo. I would, 6, 7 months pregnant, get in bed next to him, and we'd watch movies. And, they loved his attitude because he knew that God would get him through this. And it was definitely our faith that was able to get us through this. So, through trial and error, he learned to walk again. And that was a very happy day, the day that Hayden was born. He said that was something he always dreamed of, having his son on his chest. And again, the timing of God was absolutely perfect. So that's been actually 11 years. He's been cancer-free for 11 years. That's very, very, very exciting. Now, he still struggles all of the time. Phantom pain is something that's very common with amputees. It feels like for him, his leg is being burned or crushed or all kinds of things because the nerves still fire. And so that's something he's had to deal with constantly. And things have been hard, but March 17th, just a couple of months ago, we were definitely tested again. We were faced with death again, and I'll kind of explain how that happened. That's our daughter Haley over there. I came home and Luke was in bed and very weak, and he said he'd been bleeding a lot that day, and that he might need to go to the doctor, and he never wants to go to the doctor. So I knew something was wrong, and I said I would take him to the hospital, and he quickly got worse, or he couldn't get out of bed. So I called the ambulance, and the kids saw the whole thing. We've actually seen the ambulance several times recently. And we rushed him to the hospital, and he had really low blood pressure. He lost so much blood. They did a blood transfusion immediately as soon as we got there. So we went through this for about 3 days. He was in ICU, and again, we didn't know what was happening. They tried to find the source of the bleeding, and they never were able to do that. And so they just sent him home, but I knew something was still wrong. It wasn't right. So we went home, and he just wasn't right. He couldn't eat. He felt bloated. And at first they said it was the IV, and that's why he was bloated. Like, after you have a baby, you have the IV, and your legs are swollen. Like, that's not it. There's no way, because he was bloated everywhere. His skin turned yellow. He had red dots all over him. So we had a suspicion of something to do with the liver. So he went back to the hospital. They actually tried to send us home, but his mom and I said, no, you're going to admit him. And that night is when we kind of figured out what was going on. He was diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver, which is not a good diagnosis. They told us we had a 50% chance of survival. And I remember the night the doctor came in, and it was just him and I in the hospital room, and told us about it. And I felt exactly like the moment they told us that he had cancer, like, kicked in the stomach. But as soon as she left, he said, come here. He was laying in the hospital bed. He said, I want to pray. And he just prayed, and he said, God, I know you're going to get us through this. And I want you to use this for your glory. And so that night was very hard. I tried to keep it together. And that night I found a little chapel in the hospital. And I went in there to pray. And it was this little chapel with these stained glass windows, and I just kept praying over and over. I said, God, please don't take my husband. Please don't take my husband. I just said it over and over. And suddenly I was reminded of a picture that a friend had sent to me a few months before. don't know if you can see it here, but that's a picture of Jesus holding his hand out. And I remember feeling like I was underwater, like I was literally drowning. And I actually, in that small little chapel room, I actually raised my hands up and was envisioning that picture. And I said, please save me, don't let me drown. And I just remember, again, the unstoppable peace covering me, that same peace I had felt 11 years ago during cancer and many times in between. It covered me like a warm blanket, and again, he assured me in his still small voice that it was going to be okay. I had people telling me that I needed to prepare, that this could be it. And I said, no, I don't believe it. I'm not going to believe it for 1 minute, that this is going to be the end of our story. I know there's more to our story. So after 3 nights, they sent him home, and just there wasn't really much they could do. Years of chemotherapy and pain medication, all these things had really taken a toll on his liver. So I did, all I could do was pray, and I had hundreds of people on Facebook praying, and he was getting better. Actually, he started going and getting his numbers taken weekly, and his numbers, there's a scale called a Billy-Rubin scale, and his was 14, and normal is I think 1.2. So he was 14 when we started this whole process, and he'd go every week and get his blood taken, and it was going down 12. 10, and it was continuing to get lower. We were very excited. And then it was the beginning of May, and we went back to the hospital. He had an infection. His blood sugar had spiked, and that's how we found out about it. And so we were there for another 3 days. That was just at the beginning of May. And, again, God, what's going on? And we have our 3 kids who are now 7, 9, and almost 11. And just trying to keep things normal for them. But they have a strong faith too, and they've seen what we've been through and how God has gotten us through it. So after this last hospital stay, he continued to improve drastically, like a miracle. He went to his liver specialist last week, and she said, okay, you may or may not have liver cirrhosis, and your numbers are almost normal. I am so impressed, and you don't need to come back for another 3 to 4 weeks. So that's been really exciting just to watch God work. And I know it doesn't always end that way. It's not always that way, but no matter what we're facing, we can always be covered by unstoppable peace. It's always there for us if we seek it. We have to seek it and say, God, I want this. God, cover me with your peace. And he does. He definitely does. Again, we've had vast improvements, which has been absolutely amazing. Now he wants to take trips. He wants to do a lot of things that he wasn't able to do before. It was actually for the last couple of years his health was declining, and we didn't know why, and it had to do with his liver. But now I tell him it's like he's come back to life again. This was just a week or 2 ago. We have a family that has a cabin out in the woods, and he wanted to go. And it has been years since he has walked down to the river with us. And he went down with us to the river. We went to parks. He sat down at a table and played board games. And it's the most amazing thing to see him coming back to life. He took me to dinner the night before I came here, and he said, if you haven't noticed, I'm feeling better not only physically but emotionally. I said, I know. I can see it. And it's the most amazing thing to see this. We call him Mr. Incredible. We got him this shirt for Father's Day. That was on Father's Day. Funny picture of my kids. And that's really what we've seen through, but he'll say the same thing too. It's not me, it's God. It's God's strength. You can get through anything with God's strength. On my own, I can't do it. In my own human strength, there's no way that I could have gone through this. And the same thing with you and your challenges. God is there for us to lean on. I had a friend the other day who was going through a crisis. She was rushing to the hospital. Her dad had a heart attack, and so I said, she told me I inspired her when we were in the hospital. I said, here's what I want you to do. You have to stay positive. Everybody around you might be negative. I said, you put on your Superwoman cape. When you go and you have to see your dad in that coma, you can't do it in your own strength. You need to remember that God has given you the strength. So in your mind, just put it on. And it was the most amazing thing. She texted me the next day saying, it's working, the positive is spreading, that other people weren't negative. And so, again, the whole point of that is, in God's strength, we can do anything. He promised to give us peace. Peace that transcends all understanding and guards your heart and mind. Am I at peace at all times? No. But do I know that if I really seek God, that He will cover me with the most incredible peace ever? Yes, every single time. So when you feel like you're drowning, don't worry. Your lifeguard walks on water, and He will give you peace like a river. Thank you very much.